not quite as long, but only 400 units. It's all good. The stuff's got to get out there. It will have a big impact. Am I wrong? Would it have a big impact?
You're right.
Please do that. Encourage other people to do it, and we'll be able to move this thing forward. Outreach is the answer. Outreach is what will save you from having to make arguments with stone walls in courts. It will save you from having to worry about people withholding when they shouldn't, about people filing information returns when they shouldn't, and requiring you to go about the process of filing a return just to get your own money back. It's paradigm changing, and that means it's world changing. And we're about facts. We're about the truth. The whole thing, that's what CtC is all about. It's about the truth. And we need to be the force that gets those truths out into the world. And with that, I'm going to introduce our last speaker for this symposium. With a great deal of pleasure, I want to introduce my good friend, Greg Belcher, Dr. Greg Belcher, who is going to talk to you about outreach. Dr. Greg Belcher has been a practicing doctor of chiropractic since 1987, active in local politics in his home stomping ground in Maryland since 2000, and claims to have been a Tea Party himself, long before it was even a gleam in Santelli's eye. Greg is, in fact, co-chair and master of ceremonies for his local Tea Party group. Greg ran as a Ron Paul electoral delegate in 2008 and 2012, and was elected to the Republican Central Committee in his county 2 weeks ago. Greg is a 20-year member of the John Birch Society, a lifetime member of the NRA, and a current member of the 10th Amendment Center, Gun Owners of America, Institute on the Constitution, and the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association. And he has contributed heavily to the independent investigative journalism of Ben Swan, a rather important voice. He is a past member of the Federalist Society, Judicial Watch, Institute for Justice, Cato Institute, and the Future of Freedom Foundation. Greg has been a dedicated CtC warrior since 2007 and rarely allows an opportunity to pass to spread income tax truth to the great unwashed. Please help me welcome Greg Belcher.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that introduction, Pete, and thank you for that elegant and subtle segue into the topic of my talk, which, of course, is this: essentially spreading the CtC word. Of course, we've heard that emphasized more than a few times today, and I would certainly hope that nobody here would be embarrassed to urge their friends to talk about any of this material, and certainly the videos that we just viewed. Let me say that I've, all weekend I felt like a kid in a candy store, because of course I've had the whole Hendrickson clan here, and of course all you wonderful warriors for the truth, not just tax truth, but of course, as we've seen from some of our wonderful speakers, truth in all kinds of areas. And of course it's very important that we do spread truth. I hope that my presentation will not only be informative, but will be mildly entertaining. I would ask you to save any questions for the end. Apparently, of course, in the interest of time, we do have a deadline, and there's a good deal of material I'd like to try to get through. So, and actually, I've got a couple of videos I think you'll really enjoy at the end. I'm hoping that we'll have the time to take a look at those. Real quick, just a little history of my discovery of tax issues. I think, like a lot of you that I've talked with this weekend, there was that sense when you were quite a bit younger that something was just not right about what was going on, what you were having to do to go work and make money. So it was always sort of in the back of my mind. In July of 1999, however, as a C-SPAN junkie at that time, few of you are familiar with some of the names that I've got listed up there. Most of those people, unfortunately, have some erroneous ideas about the true nature of the income tax. But it raised my awareness that all is not as it had been purported to be. It really got me thinking, and it got me going online more, looking for more information along those lines. And actually, and I don't remember the gentleman's name at this point, he was a devout Christian, I think in Illinois. Some of you may even know him, Pete may be familiar with it. But anyway, he put out an email that basically said, hey, check out this Pete Henderson guy and this book, Cracking the Code. And of course, always willing to investigate something new, especially something about this hated income tax that I was going to hate more. So anyway, I picked up a copy of the book, started reading it. And as all of you know, it's not light reading. It requires quite a bit of study. And actually, it's a bit of a law lesson as you go through, out of necessity. So, after 3 readings, and a lot of thought and a lot of independent study, I was, by 2007, I was really feeling like it was time to take action. And actually, I had a few questions. My practice was then set up as an S corp, and still had some questions about the whole corporate thing. So I had heard that Pete was on his way down to Petersburg, Virginia, and I think TJ went down there with him then. And I thought, great, it's only 4 hours away. That's around the corner, so I'll pop one down to Petersburg and pick Pete's brain. So did, and based on resolving some final issues, as of May 1, 2007, I began my new enlightened journey of filing educated returns. Sure. Why we fight and why it matters. And has been discussed or alluded to at least once this weekend. Most people tend to default to conventional wisdom. What everybody already knows, right? So that must be true because everybody says it is. Well, that's kind of what we're up against, is that way too many people, through quite innocent human nature, default to conventional wisdom. And the point of continuing to batter away at the stone wall, as Pete refers to it, is that we've got to change that. Tax truth has got to become the new conventional wisdom. Of course, one reason, as Pete mentioned, is that, if we find ourselves in court, we would like to think that we've got a judge that understands this. That hopefully we have a jury that understands this. So that's the importance, of course, or one of the important reasons for getting the word out. Improper understanding of income tax leads to fill in the blank. Feel free to throw out some ideas of what that can lead to, that improper misunderstanding.
Poverty.
Yeah, poverty. Yeah.
Slavery, no part of that.
Yeah.
All good answers.
Am I right?
The correct answer is some of you alluded to this, of course. Misguided demand for repeal and replace, because they don't know what the income tax actually is, and they don't understand its truly limited nature. Again, misunderstandings as to the 16th Amendment have a lot to do with that. And of course, there's a lot of folks out there beating the drum for, let's replace the hated income tax with something, out of the frying pan into the fire, like the fair tax or the flat tax. So, benefits of a properly applied income tax is that, of course, earnings stay where they belong. Of course, if you have real income, you're paying because you owe that. But if you don't have income, you have earnings, there's no reason for you to pay. And essentially, as Pete just pointed out, we starved this behemoth that's gotten completely out of control since World War II. And the only way we're going to return to constitutionally limited government, there, is by starving this beast. Because as long as the fuel supply keeps going to Mordor on the Potomac, it's going to continue to do bad things. Law be damned, as we've seen. Okay, human nature again. Two different kinds of people. You can categorize people in lots of ways, but we're looking at truth seekers and pragmatists. And quite frankly, I think pragmatist is a generous word. I think it gives maybe a little bit more credit than some folks do. But anyway, truth seekers. Nothing matters more than the truth. And a truth seeker will follow it wherever it leads. However, as a pragmatist, and probably most people are pragmatists, they tend to have strong concerns for comfort and safety, number one, and of course, personal benefit or loss are going to weigh heavily in any consideration of any new truth, regardless of the validity or importance of that truth. Now, I'm a big fan of enlightened self-interest. I mean, that's a very human thing. In fact, that's why capitalism works as an economic system, and most other systems do not. You know, we're all essentially self-oriented. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people who are looking, staring in the face of the truth, that great truth, an important truth. And unless they see some personal benefit, well, just brush that aside or push that aside. Or, you know, you might get in trouble if you talk about this truth. That's the kind of thing we're talking about with pragmatists. In fact, I tend to refer to them as expediency mongers. I think it's probably a little closer to the truth as far as an accurate description of where they're coming from. Unfortunately, most people are probably in the pragmatist camp. Anybody who's been in an organization knows that essentially you have 10% of the people doing 90% of the work. Some people say 80-20, but same idea. You've got the small minority who's doing the heavy lifting, and everybody else is along for the ride. So that same kind of ratio you probably apply to this concept. But again, sadly, as in the case of understanding and acting, in the case of understanding and acting on the truth in the income tax, just as in matters of essential liberty, and you all know that quote, those who choose security over liberty, of course in this case truth, ultimately you're not going to have it equal. And that's the sad truth of this. So those folks who are looking out for themselves or afraid to speak the truth because they're afraid they might get in trouble or somebody might think they're out there, ultimately we've got real problems. So time to speak up. Truth seekers oath. Be without fear in the face of your enemies. Be brave and upright, that God may love thee. Speak the truth always, even if it leads to your death. Safeguard the helpless and do no wrong. That is your oath. Now, people. Thank you. I'm trying to be a little dramatic with that. Of course, Pete would never ask anybody to die for the truth. Now, I'm hardcore enough that I might, but Pete.
Hey, I quote Patrick Henry at the end of the finale in Cracking the Code, so, you know, don't,
Okay.
you know, make any assumptions here.
Well, some of you probably recognize where this comes from. And it's not about dying to speak the truth. It's about a frame of mind. It's about a level of commitment. So, getting the spirit, I think, is important for getting in the right frame of mind to get out there and push the truth out. Of course, there's the source right there, in case you were interested, Kingdom of Heaven. Of course, that's Liam Neeson speaking to his son, Orlando Bloom, in the movie, for those of you who have seen it. If not, it's a pretty good movie.
Wonderful.
Yeah, you may want to check it out. Methods for spreading the word. Starting to get into some of the meat here. Of course, word of mouth. Talk to your friends. If you have any opportunities to talk to groups, by all means, do that as well. That's sort of doing right now. Distribution of books. I've talked to a couple of people who've said that they have bought books by the case or by the dozen and distributed them. I've given away quite a few myself. In most cases, I'm selling at my cost. because I'm buying in volume, I give a discount to folks. I find that generally, if somebody pays a little something for something, they value it more. If you just give it away, they kind of take it for granted. So, you know, unless this is some really important person who would never give you the time of day, getting a book in their hands, I think, is more important than worrying about the cost at that point. Other printed materials, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll get into some individual slides here. CDs, DVDs, emails, letters to the editor, and of course social media. Katie covered that in a great deal. I'm happy to say it because I don't know a whole lot about it. I've got a Facebook account that I hardly ever use. I was happy to hear that I'm not the only fuddy-duddy in the room when it concerns email. I'm an old-fashioned kind of guy too. I like email. Word of mouth. A couple of examples of one-on-one and different levels of success. And of course, you're not going to reach everybody. One case in particular, an individual named Dave, who was a member of our Tea Party. This goes back about 3 or 4 years now. He was one of those guys, highly vocal, you know, believed everything he read online, and had a lot of falsehoods that he was repeating, not the least of which, of course, is, you know, tax started in 1913, the 16th Amendment. So we started chatting a little bit. I got him a copy of the book. To his credit, he read it. We talked some more about details. We had questions. Eventually, he acted on that knowledge, and again became a victorious warrior for tax truth. In fact, I can remember several Tea Party meetings where he would show up with state or federal refund checks and show them around, which was great. I'm loving this, you know, because here's the evidence, folks. This is, you know, Belcher's not lost his mind. This is great. So, in the other case, I call him Very Smart Mark, another good friend of mine, very active in local politics. In fact, he's probably going to be one of our next county councilmen in my county. But Mark's wife's an attorney. Of course, they talk quite a bit. And I actually asked Mark out to lunch one day so we could sit down and have some conversations about tax truth. And of course, he had a lot of the same misconceptions that we often hear. And a little different conversation with him because of his intelligence level and the fact that he's got some legal experience, which unfortunately turned out to be more of a liability than a plus. The sticking point was we got on the definition of includes and included. And of course, I explained the rules of statutory construction relative to take a common word or word, define it, now it's a legal term. Well, his answer to that, and he couldn't get past that, was this, and he deferred to his wife again, that apparently she was taught the law is to be interpreted on the basis of what a reasonable person believes or understands it to be. Now, I asked him what reasonable meant. I said, define reasonable. Well, you know, reasonable. So, you know, we couldn't get past that. And my concern was...
That wouldn't overrule the definition.
Of course not.
You know that. I know that.
That's what a reasonable...
Mr. Smart guy's too educated to see beyond where his...
What's the status concept because it means that it's to be interpreted as whatever they decide it means.
Well, no, what the first gentleman just said was that wouldn't overrule a statutory definition. That's what a reasonable person understands. Because that's reasonable. That's a fact. When the statutory definition is provided, that's why it's there. It's so that we don't leave it up to reasonable people to just figure out what they understand or believe it to be. We wrote down what it means.
Exactly. Well, when I heard this, my thought was, if this is what they're teaching in law school to these law students, then we're seeing part of a dumbing down process to make it impossible for these professionals to be able to actually understand the plain words of the law. And I still see evidence every now and then of that. In fact, I've come to the conclusion that you know, when I'm talking to somebody with a law school education, I know I'm dealing with a handicapped individual as far as understanding. Sadly, there are exceptions, but sadly, I really think there's a dumbing down process going on with obvious motives. So, So anyway, back 500 with that. Now, group discussion, Tea Party rallies, and a little trip to LPAC, Liberty PAC, for those of you Liberty folks in the audience. This is a picture of me speaking on the steps of the Salisbury, Maryland Government Building for a Tea Party rally, 4th of July 2010. And I was there not only to talk about CtC related truth and urging people to learn what the law actually says, not to just continue to assume that what everybody else says is necessarily correct, because that's what everybody says. I was also had a table set up and had a lot of CtCs and other literature that I had photocopied and put out there to spread the word. Now, not long before this, Pete contacted me about coming over to his Declaration Day party. And I told Pete, of course, Pete, I'd be there in a heartbeat, but, I'm going to be giving the speech and getting copies of books and materials into people's hands. And then Pete said, no, that's a great idea. No, you stay there. You do that. Yeah, we'll see you some other time. Sorry, just kidding. But anyway, again, one example of an opportunity to speak to a group and spread the word. This is a line of friends here at LPAC in 2012. This is when there was still some hope for what was going to happen as to the Republican nominee that year. We had all worked very hard. We'd all done door-to-door and done lots of other campaign things for Ron Paul. But the core center group there, that's Grant Helvey with the yellow, the two gentlemen on either side, to Grant's upper, to his right, is Tyler, and a little closer on this side, the balding man is another good friend of mine, Jeff Fernley, who is a anesthesiologist. Now, when I say captive audience, those three gentlemen rode over with me in my Crown Vic to LPAC, which of course provides lots of captive audience time to talk about lots of things like tax truth. Well, that conversation on that trip led to Tyler becoming quite the CtC warrior, very actively engaged. In fact, I'll talk about him a little bit more in an example of some outreach material. Jeff has studied, he's got a copy of the book, he understands intellectually what's going on. Jeff has not yet taken the plunge. Jeff may well be one of those folks who, camel through the eye of the needle thing. He's just got a little too much money to where he feels maybe he has too much to lose. I don't know. But anyway, at least they've all heard the message and they understand a little better. Again, distribution of books, etc. These are some of the people that I have hand-delivered copies of Dragon Code to. Of course, Ron Paul, he got 2 copies from me. Antonio Scalia, I was happy to hear him mention in a good light earlier today. Good friend of mine, U.S. Senate candidate Robert Broadus. Institute on the Constitution. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that organization, but it is an excellent organization as to educating people as to the Constitution, of course, fundamentals of understanding the origins of law in this country. Anyway, excellent organizations and good people. Mike Perutka, who is one of the founding members of that, was actually the 2004 Libertarian Party presidential candidate. He's an attorney, really smart guy, very committed. So if you don't know about IOTC, check him out online. My congressman, Andy Harris, and his name will come up a little bit later, hopefully, if we have a chance to watch one of the videos. He was campaigning before he was initially elected, and got him a copy of the book. I butted heads a little bit with Andy on his NDAA and CISPA votes. But it's never a bad thing to light a fire under a politician's butt and let him know what you're not happy with. I think he'll hear honest feedback from you. So, I've done it respectfully, and I think he still respects me. He was a constitutional law professor at the University of Baltimore. Had conversations with him. and lots and lots of other people. Oh, I think I mentioned yesterday, Michael Bolden of 10th Amendment Center got a copy of the book from me, and as did Tom Woods. In fact, I think I may have mentioned in a comment yesterday that, actually Tyler and I and another friend went to Chestertown, Maryland, to Washington College. Tom Woods was speaking there, and we had an opportunity to chat with Tom before he formally spoke. And I asked him whether or not he'd read the book. Yeah, he said, no, still got it. I'd given him a copy of the book at a 10th Amendment Center meeting in Philadelphia, just like a year and a half before. So he's still got the book. He still knows he needs to read it. Apparently hasn't read it yet. So anyway, two more to add to the book on. Printed materials, this is taken right off of losthorizons.com. And lots of links to lots of good information, including, I'm sure, the two videos that we just watched of Pete's, and lots of other really good information, creations, a good bit of it from CtC Warriors, and excellent information, easy to photocopy and hand out to folks. Again, another essentially downloaded image from the website with more of those links. This is my buddy Tyler, was somebody that you might recognize. In spring of 2012, we put on in Ocean City, Maryland, a mock presidential election. And one of our members contacted Adam Kokash and invited him on down for that. He came on down. So Tyler is a photo hog, so he gets his mug in with any person, famous person, or especially people that he agrees with politically. So he's got pictures of he and Julie Borowski, I don't know if you know her, and of course Tom Woods when we were there in Chestertown not too long ago. But outreach materials. I've given you some of Tyler's burned CDs that he produced and did a very professional job with. I gave him a huge stack of recordable CDs that I had that I wasn't using, and he's just been burning them off. And he's been heavily involved in distributing those to all kinds of people. He and I both are very politically active. As Pete mentioned, I was just elected to Republican Central Committee. Tyler ran also, and he's been busting his hump for the last 2.5 years, as have I. Unfortunately, he didn't have the name recognition, so he didn't make the cut. But he, of course, will remain active. But some of the folks that he got copies of this CD to were candidates for governor and lieutenant governor in the state of Maryland, and others involved in the political process, because we're both heavily involved in it. We're rubbing shoulders with these people. So he follows up with them and asks them, have you listened to it yet? What did you think? Yada, yada, yada. So he's not shy about pumping the word out, and at his own expense, creating these CDs and distributing them. By the way, I get 4 copies left. Anybody really wants a copy, I'll be happy to get it to you. Let me know. Okay, going back to the big Tea Party protest in D.C., 9/12/2009. The Show Me the Law thing, that's a little cut off up there, the photograph, that was something that Sherry Peel Jackson used to routinely say back in 2000, 2001, 2002, when I was hooked up with the We the People bunch, and we were doing the protests with signs around the IRS building and meeting in various places in D.C. As if, hollering at the folks within the IRS building would get them to come out and say, well, okay, well, let's sit down and we'll explain the law to you. I mean, kind of ridiculous, but the point is, show me the law, question mark? Show yourself the law. Right. Read the book. Right? It's an instruction manual for understanding what Title 26 and other related law actually says. That's all it is. So anyway, another little part of getting the word out there. I said I was Tea Party before, well, Tea Party before, so, doing the work for long before the Tea Party became official anyway. Letters to the editor, email, social media. How are we doing for time?
You got plenty, Greg.
Okay,
You got half an hour.
wonderful. Well, let me bore you with a letter to the editor that I wrote and talk about something falling in your lap. I was actually at this past spring, was at a Republican Central Committee meeting, and our chairman, out of the blue, said, I've been approached by the newspaper, and they want somebody to write an article on the income tax. This is a little bit before tax day. And I just thought to myself, I must have died and gone to heaven. I just fell in my lap. I said, I'll be your huckleberry. So anyway, I put this together. What's really interesting about this is that the only person that responded to this is an attorney. He is running as a Democrat to replace my Republican friend who is in my councilmanic district. He's my county councilman. So anyway, you'll hear an attorney weigh in on his handicapped position on these issues. But anyway, let me read the article. As a Republican, strong fiscal conservative, local Tea Party co-chair, and someone who views taxation generally as legalized theft, what I have to say about the much despised income tax may have most of you scratching your heads or worse. I have been afforded very little space here for exposition, so out of necessity I will be brief and to the point. 400 words is the limit. The 16th Amendment did not originate the income tax, and its repeal will not end it. It originated with the Revenue Act of 1862. Google it. The 16th Amendment merely clarifies some muddying of the waters as to who and what was lawfully taxable. The Supreme Court Pollock decision, Pollock v. Farmers Loan Trust, from 1895 did the muddying. The income tax is not an unconstitutional, unapportioned direct tax per Article 1, Sections 9 and 2 of the Constitution. It is a perfectly lawful, indirect excise, in this instance, tax per Article 1, Section 8. It is a tax on the gain, profit, or income related to the direct or indirect exercise of federal privilege as measured by the financial gain derived therefrom. It is not a tax on all that comes in, as is popularly believed. That incorrect belief is encouraged by the taxing authorities to their ultimate benefit. Your ignorance of the law is not their concern. The income tax is rather benign when properly confined to its intended target: those who work directly for the federal government and those whose money is made in whole or in part through a connection with the federal government or the use of its property. If you make your money unconnected with federal privilege, then it is not income taxable, unless, of course, you swear otherwise or fail to rebut, as most unfortunately do. That portion, if any, of your earnings that are connected to federal privilege is income taxable, but only that portion, and you should properly claim such on your 1040 form. It is for these reasons that the alternative remedies to the income tax, the fair tax and the flat tax, to name two, are not only unnecessary, they are undesirable. And for those who might be tempted to lose sleep worrying about the poor, underfunded federal government, of course, in the event that the tax went away, keep in mind that this country's period of most rapid growth, personal wealth accumulation, and maximum freedom occurred prior to the near universal personal misapplication of the income tax beginning around 1943. Questions, comments, put my email address down. Well, thank you very much. Now, this is a response from my friend, my attorney, who I had met unfortunate that the Daily Times chose to allow this misinformed and purposely misleading letter to be published. It is an attempt to restate arguments that have long been rejected by the IRS and our courts. There have been a large number of cases that have tried to redefine what is income and not income based on such fallacious arguments as stated in this letter. As a warning to anyone who takes your letter seriously, there is a 100% probability of your being audited and or prosecuted for attempting to use these arguments as a basis for failing or refusing to pay taxes on all income. Well, it's not arguable, is it? As stated in the Internal Revenue Code. Again, there is no legal basis for these arguments, and they have failed in every case that has been brought to the court. The Daily Times needs to filter out such obviously misleading letters that encourage people to violate the law. Of course, I have to respond. Ron, oh, sorry, didn't mean to use his name. What is his last name? Ron, I would have responded sooner, but wasn't tipped off to your reply. I don't go to the newspaper website, delmarvinow.com, and check everything that goes get posted on there. That Tyler did, and he said, hey, you got to respond. So, I would have responded sooner, but wasn't tipped off to your reply until this afternoon. With all due respect, your law background notwithstanding, your response is boilerplate conventional wisdom. I would challenge you to move beyond the what everybody knows to be true position and do some honest scholarship. Go to www.lawshorizons.com and begin your study. Challenge everything that Mensa member Pete Hendrickson has to say on this site by researching the actual words of the law and the regs for yourself. You are certainly in a better position than most to do so, although you would not be the first attorney to defer to his law degree and to suggest that based on that educational status, your opinion settles the argument, case closed. A few years ago, at an educational symposium sponsored by the Federalist Society on tax-related issues, I chatted with some of the presenters. A Harvard Law School professor who had made an inspired presentation based on an impressive recitation of fairly recent case law on the subject. During our chat, however, he admitted that his first-hand knowledge of the regs at Title 26 was very weak. This was universally the response from the other presenters, which included Georgetown law professor Randy Barnett, among others. You may have heard the name, apparently. Randy Barnett is pretty well known amongst local law folks. Unfortunately, the modern law school education is case law heavy, and in my opinion, if you so limit your scholarship, you will necessarily restrict your understanding of the law to the opinions of similarly educated jurists. So in the spirit of academic rigor and intellectual honesty, I would issue a friendly challenge to put aside the all too common and well-watered fear of the tax authority boogeyman and engage in some open-minded study of the pertinent law and decide for yourself whether the world is really flat after all. I have been filing educated returns since 2007, as have many, many others. Doing so may be damned inconvenient to the designs of the revenue authorities, but the law is what the law says it is, despite the opinions of the majority to the contrary. Greg, first let me say that I have no fear of the tax authority, in that I have fought them in several instances and have been proved right. Second, let me say that your comments prove my point. No case law supports your theory. You may diminish the effects of case law, however, you cannot say that there have been no cases brought to the tax court based on these arcane theories of yours which had proved successful. Therein lies the crux of the matter. Until the courts rule in your favor, your ideas are based on an interpretation that has been categorically rejected by said courts. The fact that you claim to have been filing quote-unquote educated returns, whatever that means, since 2007, in and of itself means nothing. There are individuals who carry on illegal activities for years without being caught and arrested. Without knowing the specifics of your tax returns, I can't comment further. Your last comment, the law is what the law says it is absolutely correct. The difference, however, is that you and those who agree with you are in fact in the very small minority and have been on the losing end of every case that has been litigated. I would amend your declaration as follows. The law is what the law says it is, as interpreted and ultimately determined by the courts of the country. I hope you can at least agree that the Constitution approves the concept of judicial review of our laws and that the decisions of the courts are res judicata. So don't question what Judge XYZ says in the courts. He's always right. Apparently, that's what we're going to talk about. To finish his comment, I have no issue with you wanting to change the law or overturning a long-standing stream of cases that have ruled against you. However, you should not be urging people to break the law in order to challenge it. Would you also support and urge armed rebellion and defiance? He's not a fan of the Tea Party. There are laws and sanctions against both. When you ask people to break a law, you need to inform them of the possible consequences. Wish I had to reply. Ron, had you done your homework, as I previously suggested, you would know that the courts have indeed supported my position. In fact, my position is based on several SCOTUS opinions, as well as a thorough review of the statutory history on the subject. Immediately following the ratification of the 16th Amendment, several related challenges made it to the nation's highest court. Notably, in Brushaber v. Union Pacific Railroad Company, 240 U.S. 1, 1916, Stanton v. Baltic Mining, yada yada, and Peck v. Lowe, yada yada. The court made it clear that the, quote, the provisions of the 16th Amendment conferred no new power of taxation, but simply prohibited the complete and plenary power of income taxation possessed by Congress from the beginning from being taken out of the category of indirect taxation to which it inherently belonged. And that was from Stanton. The other court opinions above further expound on the details of the limited nature of the income tax and the fact that the 16th Amendment simply provided that the constitutionality of such a tax could no longer be challenged by reference to untaxable property connected with any particular income. The water muddying untaxable property position was successfully argued in Policy Farmers Water Trust, 1895, and was the impetus for the tax law clarifying the 16th Amendment. Understand that for purposes of the relevant law and related regulations, income, quote unquote, is a legal term with a custom definition. It is not all that comes in, as is the popular understanding of the meaning of the word. This error in understanding is likely the source of much of the misinterpretation or the proper application of the 16th Amendment. As stated in Halvering v. Edison Brothers Stores, 133 F 2D 575, 1943, quote, the Treasury cannot, by interpretive regulations, make income out of that which is not income within the meaning of the Revenue Acts, nor can Congress, without apportionment, tax as income that which is not income within the meaning of the 16th Amendment, period, quote. A proper understanding of the foregoing is the linchpin in debunking the heavily promoted false narrative regarding the realities of the 16th Amendment and its relationship with income taxation. When one considers how much money and power is at stake were the truth to become widely known and acted upon. The motive for so much propaganda to the contrary should be fairly obvious. I refer you again to losthorizons.com and a copy of Cracking the Code, The Fascinating Truth About Taxation in America by Peter Barrett Edwards. Now, he did respond. However, it was not a very nice response. In fact, unfortunately, I went on and pulled this off. Actually pulled this off prior to the fact that the newspaper eventually cleared out any of the archived material, so I wasn't able to pull up. Actually, I sent him on an email, a very respectful email, and said, look, Ron, I'd really like to get your last response. Didn't tell him so I could read it in front of this group that I was going to be speaking in front of, but Tyler apparently did read it. He said, you know, he was talking about stuff like, you know, the Nazis had pretty compelling arguments, you know, in favor of this, that, and the other too, you know, so he was pretty pissed off at that point. He was, you know, floundering. So anyway, didn't have much gain after that. So my real question, of course, is, you know, is he going to wise up and actually do some real research and learn the truth, or is he going to continue to be happy to live in this smug little, ignorant little world? Time will tell, I suppose.
You can't argue with
Very eloquently put. what's the word that Pete used the other day? Anyway.
So the IRS comes after him even though he's doing their
Well, what's so interesting, and I probably should bring this up, I'm assuming maybe this video is going to be pumped out there for public consumption, but unfortunately, as I mentioned, the gentleman is running against a good friend of mine. Well, a good friend of mine doesn't mess around politically, and he's done some background checking. This individual is originally from Ohio. He lost his law license in Ohio. In fact, the information is that he's over $1 million in hock to the IRS. So, if there's anybody that needs to do some serious research, this gentleman needs to. So his arguments to the contrary, that he's prevailed in his battles with IRS, are apparently not entirely true. So anyway, enough said. How are we doing for time, TJ?
10 more minutes.
3 minutes.
You have 10.
10 minutes?
10 minutes.
Okay, good. All right, we might just get through that. In fact, I'd really like for you to see these videos. Again, the benefit of email, again, is allows much more in-depth discussion. As Katie talked about this morning, most social media is just, you know, short, rapid hits. Nice thing about that is you can just keep hitting and hitting and hitting and hitting, and you can reach a whole lot more people that way.
Did Gary North do a hit piece on Cracking the Code? Really?
Yes, and if he had the time, I would, it's a long letter, my response to his hit piece. And we had a back and
Can
forth.
I get copies of that?
I'll be happy to send, in fact, I'll offer anybody, if you give me your email, I'll be happy to send you, well, access to the hit piece, my response to him, and ultimately, unfortunately, the result of our back and forth was that Gary, unfortunately, is a mega pragmatist. He's not really interested in the truth. He's an expediency monitor, sadly. Because I had a lot of respect for the man.
But what a thing, because this guy wrote the introduction to one of Anthony C. Sutton's books. He wrote one of Sutton's most important books. He wrote the introduction. What a transformation.
I thought you were going to use different words, but I get your drift, yeah. Well, you know, whether, you got to wonder how much money is being spread around to basically bring these people around. You know, you see some weird stuff coming out of some, I mentioned the situation with Tom Wood, and I was shocked that he was ambivalent about the whole Article 5 Convention of the States thing. I thought he'd have been dead set against it.
There's a lot
Has
more
somebody
going
spread
on.
some money around? I don't know.
Let me interject something really quickly, Gary, if I might. Or Greg, I'm sorry.
I
When,
knew you were talking.
when you have, over the course of a long career of writing, referred to the 16th Amendment as the origin of the income tax 655 times, you get pretty antsy about discovering that you've been
That you're wrong.
spouting error 655 times over a 40-year career. And Gary North is in that position, as is Tom Woods, frankly, as is Tom DiLorenzo, as is Lou Rockwell, as is, many, Jay Kornberger, many other people who, we would like to have thought would be, enthusiasts about this liberating truth. Unfortunately, they're kind of invested in error.
That's the kind of guy you are, very generous. You're a stand-up guy, Pete. Quite frankly, if I had made a mistake, if you'd made a mistake, you'd reverse position and admit your mistake. It says a bit, if that's really the case, then it says something about where these gentlemen really are coming from, unfortunately. I don't know, but sorry, my opinion. I'm a little harder on them than you. Okay. I can never pass up an opportunity to educate. Some of my favorite little appropriate quotes. One simple one, no guts, no glory. So have some guts, get out there and get some glory. And, when you're not afraid to stand your ground and get out and speak the word, you have an opportunity to meet and hang out with some really neat people. In fact, this was taken 2 years ago at the Declaration Day party, and unfortunately, if I had a picture of the whole family, that would have probably been more appropriate to have the whole Hendrickson crew in there, but I had this, so pop that up there. Believe me, I'm honored to be here and to be a part of this and to be called a friend by Pete Hendrickson. Okay, video. Let me preface this. Don't start just yet, DJ. The 19th of June, this past, in Howard County, Maryland, we had Trey Gowdy, and I think a few of you know who he is. He's a former prosecutor. He's a congressman from South Carolina. He is a man of the law.
Yes.
He doesn't put up with a whole lot, and he is not shy about holding criminal bureaucrats' feet to the fire. Now, this is kind of the lighter side of Trey Gowdy. And I was lucky enough to actually be sitting next to and chatting with our national committee woman, who is a quite attractive blonde, who is also a brilliant and delightful political strategist. There's a reason why she's our Maryland GOP national committee woman. But anyway, so I was honored to be at this event and actually hear his entire speech. I wish somebody would post his entire speech from that event online, because it was incredible. This is one small part of that speech I think you'll enjoy.
Before we talk about how to win again, and I know this is the first time I've met many of you, and it's socially inappropriate to share the details of the dream with the group that you just met. I don't know how many of you have a background in psychiatry or psychology, but I did. I had a horrible dream last night, and if you give me just a couple of minutes, I'd love to share it with you, and if any of you can interpret it, that'd be great. In my dream, John Boehner, Lindsey Graham, and Andy Harris all tragically died and went to heaven the same day.
Andy Harris is my country.
It could happen, I guess.
It was at the event.
Sure. I think it was a lightning bolt hitting a golf cart, but I'm not for sure. I know that they got to heaven, and St. Peter said, look, I know you're big shots on earth, but the rules up here. You either follow the rules or there are going to be consequences. Well, Speaker Boehner was the first person to break the rules in heaven. He broke into the CVS to steal some cigarettes and some hand lotion. My dream, it happened. Trust me, I'm a lawyer. So in my dream, I see John Boehner, and he is chained to Nancy Pelosi with a 10-foot long chain. And in a voice as loud as thunder, I hear, John Boehner, you violated the rules of heaven, and this is your punishment for all the time. And then I see Lindsey Graham. And Lindsey's running around in heaven wanting to know where John McCain is. I'm not going to get into why McCain wasn't there. That's somebody else. But in my dream, Senator Graham was chained to Roseanne Barr. A 5-foot-long chain, and a voice as loud as thunder, I hear, Lindsey Graham, you have violated the rules of heaven. This is your punishment for all of eternity. And this is where I get emotional, because Andy's a friend. Andy's a friend, but in my dream, I see Dr. Andy Harris. And he is chained with a 5-foot-long chain to the former supermodel Cindy Crawford. And then a voice as loud as thunder, I hear, Cindy Crawford, you have
He is a super guy. Hope you enjoyed that. He's also got a real comedic talent. I don't know if you can tell from the video. His qualities of hope. He's a real deadpan. And anyway, he could be the if he wants to. But instead, he's a fire-breathing man of the law who has no fear confronting lawlessness. And this next video, I wish you would engage for just a moment in a little guilty pleasure with me in that if you would imagine that some of these IRS and DOJ hacks and these federal and district court bench warmers involved in this persecution of Doreen and Pete, imagine them on the stand themselves and Trey Gowdy cross-examining them. This is a video of him in a congressional hearing.
It's a state congressman. Yeah, he's a state congressman or federal congressman?
U.S. United States. I should say something about me. Oh, that's the one, yeah. That's the one. Where he's basically asking some pointed questions of the IRS commissioner. So imagine him doing this with some of these hacks that Pete Doreen has to deal with. If we have time, maybe we can probably will.
I'm just here to Commissioner Jordan. Can you explain for our fellow citizens what today's phone news and evidence means?
I have no idea what that is.
Well, we'll help you with it. Okay, exfoliation of evidence is when a party fails to preserve evidence. There's a negative inference that the jury can draw from their failure to preserve the evidence. If you destroy documents, the jury can infer that these documents are going to be good for you. If you fail to preserve the jury can infer that these documents are not going to be good for you.
Turn it up on the computer, TJ.
Is drawn from their failure to preserve the evidence. It's common sense, right? If you destroy something, the jury has a right to infer that whatever you destroyed would not have been good for you. Or else every litigant would destroy whatever evidence was detrimental to them, agreed?
I'm not sure. I think if you destroy the evidence and people can prove it, it wouldn't be a good thing for your defense.
Well, no, it's worse than that. The jury can draw, and they're instructed, they can draw a negative inference.
All right?
And that's true if a taxpayer is being sued by the IRS administratively, civilly, or prosecuted criminally, and they fail to keep documents, the jury can draw a negative inference from the fact that they didn't keep receipts or emails or documents. So if it's true and it applies to a taxpayer, it ought to apply to the IRS as well, agreed?
Is this a trial? Is this a jury? Is that what you're...
I said administrative, civil, or criminal. If you wanna go down that road, I'm happy to go down it with you, Commissioner. In fact, I'm glad you mentioned it. You have already said multiple times today that there was no evidence that you found of any criminal wrongdoing. I want you to tell me what criminal statutes you've evaluated.
I have not looked at any.
Well, then how can you possibly tell our fellow citizens that there's no criminal wrongdoing if you don't even know what statutes to look at?
Because I've seen no evidence that anyone consciously.
Well, how would you know what elements of the crime existed? You don't even know what statutes are in play. I'm gonna ask you again.
I think-
What statutes have you evaluated?
I think you can rely on common sense, that nothing I have seen.
Common sense. Instead of the criminal code, you want to rely on common sense. No, Mr. Scott, you can shake your head all you want to, Commissioner. You have said today that there's no evidence of criminal wrongdoing. And I'm asking you what criminal statutes you have reviewed to reach that conclusion.
I've reviewed no criminal statute.
All right, so you don't have any idea whether there's any criminal conduct or not because you don't know the elements of the offense.
I've seen no evidence of wrongdoing.
Oh, well, that's very different than no evidence of criminal misconduct, Commissioner.
It seems to me if you haven't done wrongdoing, it'd be pretty hard to argue that you've had some criminal violation if you
Well,
didn't.
what did Lois Lerner mean when she said perhaps the FEC will save the day?
I have no idea
What did she say, what did she mean when she said we need a project, but we need to be careful that it doesn't appear to be per se political? You don't think that's a potential violation of 18242?
I have no idea if it.
Because you haven't looked at 18242. You don't have any idea whether there's any criminal wrongdoing or not.
With regard to the production of the evidence, the production of Lois Lerner emails, I have seen no evidence of wrongdoing. What else?
Well, if there were, that would be a separate criminal offense.
What else went on with Lois Lerner, I said in the past.
So what you're saying is you don't have any idea whether she engaged in criminal wrongdoing. You're just saying that you did not engage in any with respect to the email.
I haven't seen any wrongdoing with regard to the production of Lois Lerner emails.
But you are not saying there was no criminal wrongdoing with respect to the targeting of conservative groups. I want to be very clear. You're not saying that.
I made no judgments.
So you disagree with the president when he says there's not a smidgen of corruption.
There are people who have been making judgments both sides about whether there were.
And you know what? I'm not one of those. I'm just simply saying we will never know because you didn't keep the evidence. The evidence was spoliated. And whether it's negligent, whether it's intentional, whether it's reckless, we still don't have the evidence, Commissioner.
Well, you have the evidence that there is no emails from the White House. You have all of the Treasury emails. So the basic premise that this was an argument in a conspiracy driven by the White House is.
No, sir, you're wrong about that. You're wrong about that. That you're repeating a talking point from our colleagues on the other side that we're obsessed with the White House. It was Jay Carney who perpetuated the myth that it was 2 rogue agents in Ohio. It wasn't any of us. Was that accurate? Was that first initial line of defense that this is just 2 rogue agents in Ohio? Was that accurate, Commissioner?
Not that I know of.
All right, so that wasn't accurate, and that came from the White House. Who said there's not a smidgen of corruption? Who said that, Commissioner?
My understanding is that was the president.
It was the president. So that's Jay Carney and the president both inserting themselves into the IRS scandal. And you want to blame us for bringing the White House into it?
I haven't blamed you at all.
You just did, Commissioner. You just did.
Well, it's a good argument. All I said was the White House has revealed there were no Lois Lerner emails. Treasury has given you all of their emails. So to the extent that the argument was that Lois Lerner was conspiring and emailing back and forth, thus far, I haven't seen any.
You can be engaged in a conspiracy that doesn't include the White House.
Good. I got time's up. Right. Thank you, sir.
You can be tough. Well, hope you enjoyed that. We're getting real close to needing to be out of the room, so in order to help Pete out, I will say, look, if you got any questions for me, we'll head outside and we can chat then.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you very much. That was a great presentation. Your letter writing is just outstanding.